Let's get to the next game, Shovel Knight. We had to mention this as well, along with Undertale.
I love this game. It feels like a NES game to me.
I was thinking about too. I'm like, it really feels like a Capcom game. Like this feels like a game that
it does.
Absolutely.
It would have came out, and it's like you could see Capcom developing. You know, they had like Little Nemo, they had obviously Rescue Rangers, and like all those games like that. Like it really just
definitely
feels. Who developed this one? Oh, he just Yacht Club Games. That's who it was.
Oh, Yacht Club, right?
Yeah, really fun game. Like it's I really say it draws parallels more to like DuckTales because you have things like
especially with the shovel.
Yeah, well you have your shovel instead of your cane, and you're pogoing on enemies and stuff like that. It's a super fun game. Like I mean, I don't even know what you can say about it. It's if you like DuckTales. You know, you like those old Capcom games, go check it out. It's a hell of a lot.
So by former Way Forward Technologies. Well, looks like they got their start.
Okay, so
that makes a lot of sense.
So pretty much like everything I think we're talking about here is almost like Way Forward or like elements drawn from Way Forward have done like probably 80% of the games that we're talking about.
It's like they just know their way around like a good platformer or something like this style because they've been in it for quite a long time actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they were even out before Shantae. Like we were discussing before the podcast, we were talking about Shantae there.
Wow, like
yeah, they
it's
got
kind
of funny how the company, you know, it's kind of like this could have been Capcom. You know, Capcom
could have been, especially with the way that
looks like I'm behind the curve here because there's quite a few DLCs for Shovel Knight here that I've
and deservedly so.
Oh yeah, it's definitely one of those games where it's kind of like they could just keep pumping out DLC and people keep playing it. Like it's a fantastic game. Like I said, especially if you love like DuckTales, it really draws parallels to DuckTales.
Yeah, especially when you can bounce on the bad guys with your shovel.
Absolutely, it's like you just know that's DuckTales.
Yeah, I know this one came out for it was on handhelds first. I think we said the 3DS.
3DS at the time.
Yeah, so it came out for the 3DS originally, and then after that, because I know they came out for the Wii U as well, and then I think for the PlayStation. Yeah, so
you got the Vita.
Looks like it came out for everything. I'm including Amazon Fire TV.
Yeah, why is that?
But not
Fire
Ouya.
Because Amazon's Android devices don't have Google Play, so they have to publish it on their platform.
Okay.
I mean, you can sideload Google Play onto an Android tablet, but
it's like wink, wink.
Yeah.
But that's probably why.
But yeah, so I mean, this one is a little bit earlier in the cycle of all this because it still came out for the last gen consoles.
Yeah, but it's around the same time, like after 2012 or so, where you got the new consoles really picking up steam.
Yeah, where it's kind of like really at the tail, like the last throes of the PS3 and
this one feels like an actual retro game though when you play it. Like it doesn't feel like a new game that's written to be a retro game, but when you play this to me it feels like
well, I think that's the thing with a lot of them is it some like Blazing Chrome or like this like Shovel Knight it feels like a game that could have came out in the era that it's replicating that visual style to, which is kind of a hard thing to do, I think. Because how do you make a game feel like it came out? Like, I mean, you don't want to have slowdown and like sprites blipping in and out and stuff like that to really capture that feel. You want to have there's just that like you can't really write it on paper to be like, how do you make this game feel like that style?
Managed to do it. It's like
just that perfect amalgamation of things that come together to really be like, yeah, like that feels like it came out then. Like I mean, you look at like Bloodstained, and it's kind of like it takes elements from that, but you could be like, but I know this never would have came out at that time frame. Like it's just,
there was no way.
There's things about it that just feel more like, well, it's a new game that just like replicates that style or the game. In terms of gameplay or in terms of graphics, stuff like that. But yeah, ones like this really feel like...
It literally feels like it could have been a canceled game for the Super Nintendo.
Like
they started writing it in 94, and for whatever reason, it never came out. And it, same thing with Blazing Chrome. I mean, it feels like it was a...
Yeah, it feels like a game that could have been like made for the Genesis. And I think there's actually stuff that's kind of happened with that recently, actually. Because there's a run and gun shooter that just recently came out. I can't think of the name of it, but it was actually a game that was in development in the Genesis era, and it just like got lost, whatever else, and then they found it, and then
I think I might know what this is. Isn't that something like Ultra Core?
Yeah, something like that.
That's like a pack-in for the Mega
pack-in
SG, the analog Mega SG.
Yeah, but what it was is like somebody found the code for this game, and then they actually just released it. And this was a game that was written. I'm pretty sure it's Ultra Core.
Because the story goes that it was DICE who made this, by the way.
Yeah.
And that apparently was almost complete. They actually got like a Genesis development system to finish up the game, and they said, we're gonna release it again.
Yeah, it's 94 is when it's originally
there we go.
developed.
Like,
Digital Illusions. Oh, DICE, right.
Exactly. Yeah. And they basically finished it off, and they gave it basically as a pack-in game for like the Mega SG.
Yeah.
Which is a nice little touch.
Oh, this is that Bull Lanikin game. Okay, I think I watched a video about this.
It's like it's graphically pretty good for what it's trying to do. Like, wow.
Okay, sorry. What is a Mega SG?
It's just kind of like one of those emulator consoles. Kind of. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. It's
the FPGA Genesis.
Yeah.
Which it comes at a premium for sure, but
it's an analog product.
Yeah.
It's one of those FPGA stuff.
I mean, the whole FPGA thing's
another topic we're about to cover. Like,
no,
I
remember.
Just
this is a messed up game.
Kind of pulling ourselves back here. Like Ultra Core was developed. Like I said, it was kind of one of those weird situations where a game was developed back then and then it actually came out now.
Exactly.
But it's such a weird thing to actually have that happen. I mean, if you look at like Star Fox 2, right?
Yes.
The game was in development, like never released, and then they kind of had the mini consoles. But now I think a lot more people are catching on to like retro being a big thing again, where they can literally take a game that was never released back then and they can actually release it now and people will know about it and be kind of excited about it and kind of
you attract new fans. Like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, I actually like this.
Yeah, like it's kind of weird because you kind of wonder how much it draws in new fans too who never would have played these games before.
Yeah, and some of these games really do deserve a second chance at life, to be honest, or at least some sort of a chance because they've never been released sometimes.
Yeah.
There's nothing more satisfying than going to somebody and be like, okay, when this game was starting to be written, you weren't born yet.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of satisfaction. It's like, you can take a game.
Okay, boomer.
Yeah.
I mean, we got that. It's like, okay, it's like, you're getting to that point where it's like, back in my day kind of deal.
Yeah, I know.
But, it's nice to have, like, new fans here. It's like, they may see it differently, all that stuff.
I mean, it's curious to see, like, the new generation of gamers, right?
How
Absolutely. They play these games, and it's like, well, is it all older people who are playing these games who have that nostalgia and that's what's triggering it? Or is it actually, like, new people who never played a game like that and they're playing and they're like, wow, this is awesome. Like, this is so much fun. Like,
it's surprising how many people of the, I want to say, most recent generation are into retro games.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too, right? You get parents bringing their kids in, playing the games with them and stuff like that. Right?
They get curious, all that stuff.
Thing. Yeah, you really draw them in.
Well, it's probably the fact that their parents probably had this gear lying around and they basically grew up playing with it because it happened to be in the house, right?
Yeah,
so
you never know.
Yeah.
So moving forward, so that was Shovel Knight. We kind of went off topic again. Mm-hmm. We have a habit of doing that.
Great
game though.
Great game.
Scott?
Really suggest checking it out. Really fun game. Plays like DuckTales. Check it out.
Yep.
And next one we're going to be talking about, another beat 'em up, is Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Ooh, yeah.
So this is another one that was like, it was a beat 'em up that, because it came out on PS3 and 360
it was in
originally.
the Xbox Live Arcade, and apparently it got delisted for a time.
It did, due to licensing issues.
Licensing. It gets murky, I think, because of the whole, like, you have...
But if you bought it before the licensing issue, you get to keep it. So, for example, I have it on my 360, and I think they just recently relisted it.
Yeah,
they remastered it a little bit.
I don't think they relisted it as much as they made the quote complete edition that you can buy now, where it had the original game plus all the DLC. So I don't know if they just reached another licensing agreement to re-release the game.
Sorry guys, I'm not paying twice for a game. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also nice that you got a previously delisted game and it's actually back, generating sales again. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty fun game. I mean, there's not really a whole lot to say about this one. I mean, it's kind of along the same line. I'd say it's kind of along the same lines as like River City Ransom, where it's got like those little bit of an RPG element to it.
It's almost too hard, though. I mean, the amount of time
a lot of people were saying, like, it seems like it's a lot harder than the PS3 one was. And I was like, I don't know. I never played the PS3 one, but I'm like, yeah, like, enemies in this one seem really, like, hyper-aggressive on you.
Yeah, like the amount of beating you have to do on one guy is probably like 10 or 15
insane.
It feels like 10 or 15 minutes before the guy finally dies, and it's like, and then you move a screen over, and then there's 2 more guys you have to beat on for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then in a way it's kind of like Demon Souls. When you die, it puts you so far back, you have to fight your way through these 15-minute guys again.
So are you saying that this can draw parallels to, say, Adventures of Bayou Billy? Where you're beating on enemies for 20 minutes before they die?
Yes,
is that the style that they were going for?
Or Double Dragon for 2600.
Ooh, wow.
Where you die instantly because you can't even get a hit on the guys.
Wow, that is just such
but yes,
a bit.
yes. I would have to say
I liked it. I liked Scott Pilgrim, but
I got sucked
would
in
I
by
really
the art.
recommend it to people? I don't know. I think if you
It's not a great game.
if you like the movie,
If you like something like
if you like beat 'em ups,
yeah, definitely.
It's
I
not
think
a great
it's not
beat 'em
really
up,
for
though.
everybody though. Yeah, I think it's kind of like it's one of those games I kind of played and I was like,
I got it because I got sucked in by the graphics. Like the screenshot we have here, that looks fantastic.
yeah.
I love the
I mean,
pixel artwork.
The art style and everything in the game is fantastic.
then you
But there's
s-
definitely just something like it's missing that je ne sais quoi to it.
It's very River City Ransom like, but
yeah.
it's I don't know.
If you like beat 'em ups, check it out. If not, don't worry about it.
It's also got that like Earthworm Jim aesthetic a little bit, especially with.
A little bit. I mean,
bit.
the art style
But it's
is like
way too more advanced than that.
yeah,
for sure.
the art style is like the comics were.
Yeah.
Or graphic.
You know,
novels, I don't know what you
that's
wanna call
basically where it draws its
the art
inspiration
is
from.
fantastic. I mean, I
Yeah,
have no
it
complaints
looks
about
great, but yeah, I mean, the game is kind of like it's probably a little bit more difficult than it needs to be. It's more like old quarter eaters.
Oops.
Take it or leave it. It's worth a look. I think if you like beat 'em ups, though.
All right, let's get to
that.
the
Oh
next
god,
one.
here's the
Bloodstained.
next
Here
one.
we go.
Bloodstained Ritual of Night. We kind of talked about this one a little bit, so maybe we'll just kind of
Yeah, we're gonna
over
skip
that
past
one.
that.
Yeah, we already did.
We
So
beat-
Yeah, we
beat
already
that
kinda
horse to
talked about
death.
that one, I think. All right, so Cuphead.
Yes,
This
we get to
one-
talk about Cuphead.
So I think we've already established I like hard games. I like games like this. I like my Contras. I like my Blazing Chromes. I like my Dark Souls. I like to.
The problem I have with this game is when you play it on normal, it's too hard for somebody like me. So unfortunately, when you put it on what they classify as easy, then you can't progress in the game because you're in easy mode, and it's like, why are you penalizing me because I'm old? Like, let's
It's
go.
like,
But at the same time, this. Like, I'm a huge fan of the Max Fleischer animation, the old Popeyes, the old
oh
Disney,
yes, that's
like
like
the
that
old-
good style.
the old MGM
good style.
animation from the 1930s. So when I saw this game, it is just absolutely breathtaking. Like, I love the art style.
It's one of those mixed bags, I'll say, on this game, because to me, like, you need to know what you're getting yourself into. Like,
Yes.
I did not.
It is extremely hard. There is like bosses are bullet sponges. Like, it's not. You're just gonna plow through it. You can set it on easy, and then you're gonna fly through it. And
See,
I
I
was,
don't
kind, I
wanna-
was kind of laughing when you're talking about easy difficulty because for whatever reason it just triggered in my head the Ninja Gaiden where they had Ninja Gaiden Black where they had was it Ninja Dog difficulty. It's kind of like
Ninja
just a slap in the
Dog.
face. It's like if you die too many times, then you can be like, "You sucked. You want to set to lower?" And it's like, "Yeah, I guess."
See, I don't want an easy game where I just breeze through it because that's not satisfying.
That's not satisfying.
I mean, I
I
think some of
want-
the games is giving you that option. Though. Like easy should be easy.
I want it to still give me a challenge, but not frustrate me to hell like normal mode on this thing does. It's
Oh
like-
yeah. Oh, it's. I mean, that's the one thing I'll say with the game that might turn off a lot of people, and that was big when it came out. Was that it's hard. It is not an easy game.
And you got like the inevitable like oh my god, it's freaking hard as freaking Dark Souls. I'm like, really?
That's what people like though. Like
Yeah.
I think they would have done better if they had made easy mode practice mode.
yeah,
Something like that. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
yeah, like it's gotta. You definitely turn away a lot of people when you say it's really hard because there's going to be people who are just like, I don't want to do that. I just want something I can sit down, I can play, I can have some fun. It's cool. I like the art style. The art style is fantastic for it, though. I know a lot
Absolutely.
of everything was like hand drawn for this, like
Yeah.
cell art, everything. Like
Everything is absolutely
it
hand
looks
absolutely.
Like personally,
because it was the Fleischer era art. I think the art style.
Yeah,
it's like,
like,
it looks
really, really good.
this was really personally disappointing for me because I heard about this game, I saw all the hype for it, the artwork and everything, and then I got it and I couldn't play it because it was too hard. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, like that's the one thing that I almost like. It's disappointing about because I almost wish that it was easier to get more people involved into playing, where you could have like make 6 difficulties, be like, you could take more hits, whatever else. Like just
Is it co-op?
Yes,
it is
I've
co-op.
actually played it in like co-op, and I can tell you it's a little better when you're playing with a
Okay, so when it's
buddy.
so the
when it's
one-
co-op,
But-
when it's co-op, do they ramp it up when it's co-op?
Yes, I was just gonna say.
Ah,
one-
That's the
jerks.
thing, it
One
does.
issue with
Jerks.
it is that when you make it co-op, and then what it is that if you put a second
Toasty.
player, it's just like, well, it just doubles the enemy's health, and it's like, oh, well, that sucks. Like, well, you're not making it easier on me by
But-
having a buddy. You're just making it even harder.
But at least with when you got a co-op buddy, it's like if one of you dies, you can kind of sort of
Yeah,
revive.
you can bounce on them and revive them. So a
Yeah.
big part of the game is like there's the parry mechanic where you jump and you do a little spin and you basically pop certain enemy attacks and stuff like that.
But, like-
It's a lot of mix of like you have like run and gun stages and then you also have
The boss stages.
fights. So I think it's like a 50-50 mix almost.
It's a good mix of that. But personally,
Which is kind of interesting. I kind of like how they do that, where you have like the boss fights, but they'll be like multi-stage boss fights where you'd be like 4 different phases.
yeah, they got phases and all that stuff. Huh?
I know there's the one that's kind of like a bullet hell shooter because you're like there's a couple flying
Yeah,
stages.
the plane sections and all that.
Yeah,
Definitely.
So there's good mix of gameplay and everything like that. And like I said, I think my biggest disappointment with it is just they just made it too hard. Like I think
You are actually saying that something is too hard?
I'm not saying too hard for me. I'm just saying.
Oh,
that
okay.
I think. Well, I
Just to draw
I
in
think
like
the issue with
players.
is
It
that
is
you're
for
gonna-
me.
You're going to turn away players when you make it too difficult because they're just not going to want to do that, right? And it's such a good game.
You
really
can't
when
see
you
me
say
right
it's
now,
hard
but I'm
and
raising
somebody-
my hand.
Yeah. When you make it too hard, people look at it and they're like, "Wow, that looks awesome." It could be such a fun game, but you just have that prohibitive level of difficulty that just turns people off like that. Like
That was
They-
my experience exactly. Yes.
they just don't want to play it. They play the first level or two and they're like, "Well, this is too hard. I'm done. I'm not getting anywhere."
It wasn't fun. It was frustrating.
Yeah, and it's such a fun game. Like, there's just so much to see in it. So much like, it's good. But again, I wish they would have made it giving you the option where you could have it easier.
I am older and wiser now, so I'm gonna download it and give it a try.
Personally, I have mixed feelings about it. It's like it's one of those games where it's like really hard. I'm not gonna lie that it can be quite hard, but somehow, at least personally for me, is that you kind of just want to keep trying over and over again. It's one of those games.
Chris sucks.
It's like you just keep it's like you're just not ashamed about dying or anything. You just keep trying over and over again.
Yeah, but I mean, you need to have that mentality to do that too. And I know not everybody has the time or the mentality to do that.
Yeah,
And that's
that's
why,
the thing.
like, I mean, if you like I said, if you like a Dark Souls style of game and you're used to that and you know what to expect going into it, then you can kind of like almost like mentally prepare yourself that you're like, yeah, I'm gonna die like 500 times. I don't really care. It's just a part of the game. Like death is a part of the game. Where this one is kind of like it almost like it loses out a little bit because of that. Where they made it prohibitively difficult. Where it's like, oh, but you could have.
Yeah, I couldn't.
so much more.
I couldn't
Could've
get in,
been,
I
could've
couldn't
been,
get into
could've been.
Demon Souls. It was just too frustrating. The same thing. I don't want to talk about it specifically, but Sekiro, that was the same problem too.
Oh, I love Sekiro. I love
You need to give me some tips on that game because I want to play that
games
game.
that want to like
I must
tie me up
See-
and
Yeah.
start beating me. Just
see. The problem is when I play these games, it's like, do I actually suck at this game, or am I missing a game mechanic that is letting me die? Like,
It's that
like,
part.
am I,
Well-
like, how does the parry work? Am I not dodging? Like,
yeah. I mean,
what am I doing wrong here? You know,
Again, this is another thing we can talk about in the future. Is things like
the same thing with
Difficulty.
the
Cuphead.
gameplay difficulty, where you talk about things like when is a game cheap? Like you look at like Mega Man 2, where it's like you're dropping down through a Flashman stage, and it's just like beams come out and blast you and blow your way instantly. Like, well, that's not fair. Like the only reason I know about them is because I've played the game before. If I've never played it, it's not fair. It's not triggering my mechanics that I did a mechanic wrong and that's why I died.
but if you,
But
you
then
know,
you
after
games-
5 times, you figure it out, right?
Yeah,
Something
but
like that.
but that's like cheap difficulty versus like difficulty like Contra, where it's a difficult game, but all the mechanics are laid out, and the only reason you die when you die in a game like that, you're like, oh, I know I died because I did this. I shouldn't have done that. Like you feel responsible, I guess, more like it's giving
like
you
it's-
the power to the player to be like, I died because of something I did versus I
Exactly.
died because. What the hell is this? Like, how was I supposed to know about that? Like, that's just stupid. It's just, quote, cheap difficulty.
You got that line where it's like, is it my fault or is it the game's fault?
I'll give you an
always
example of a cheap gameplay. Far Cry New Dawn.
Yeah.
When you go to one of the bases to liberate it from the bad guys, as soon as the alarm goes off, no matter where you hide, they can see you everywhere.
Hive mind.
They gotta have the Metal Gear Solid that
Ring. Like hive mind.
when
they
the
just know
alarm-
where
when the
you
alarm
are.
you just know where you are. It's like, dude, really? Like I'm hiding
you
in a
kidding
cardboard
me?
box.
Yeah, they can see you everywhere. It's ridiculous. Like they can see you through walls. If there's like tons of trees between you and them, they can see you through the trees, but you can't. Now that's what I classify as a cheap gameplay tactic.
But like I said, I mean that really feels like it's like I said, talking about difficulty of games is definitely a conversation in and of itself. But Cuphead, if you like difficult games, if you can handle dying a lot, and believe me, you will die a lot in this game. It is a fantastic game to check out. I just, like I said, I really do wish that they had made it easier for people to get into, because it's such a good game, and it's just like, it's almost like if it was, you could give that little bit easier for people to play it, then it would just draw in so much more people, and maybe we would have got more games out. I know they're talking about doing DLC for it, but I honestly don't know.
I believe the DLC is about, it's in progress, but due to the way things are from last year, that it's been delayed for quite a bit, and this kind of animation actually takes quite a bit of time.
And that was the big thing with it, like like the amount of work that they had to put in to get it, and you almost wish, like I said, with the amount of work they put into it too, you almost wish more people could experience the art style and everything to the game. But it's beautiful to even watch the game.
The DLC is nightmare mode.
As if it wasn't already hard enough.
It's too easy? Difficulty. We've updated it and made it even harder.
They'll sell you the whole seat, but you're only going to need the edge.
You're going to need some seatbelts for this boy.
All right, so next one on our topic is Spelunky.
I don't know anything about this game at all.
It's another roguelike game. I know they made a sequel to this one. I played a good chunk of it. Like it's almost like
looks like fun.
I don't want to say like a Pitfall. Like I kind of like I draw parallels more to like obscure games like Stanley and the Search for Dr. Livingstone. Like it's just kind of like it's a platformer game. Like it's like a weird mishmash of things.
This looks like the old Duke Nukem game for DOS.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, like it's got that tile set thing going
on. Yeah, exactly. Like it's like procedurally generated, but it's just like the tile sets are just like.
So there's a little bit of Metroidvania in here, sort of looking around for items, stuff like that.
Yeah, but
it's not exactly.
Normally in Metroidvania, you're thinking about things where it's like, well, drawing the Metroid elements of backtracking and having a big map that you get new ability and you can go to a new place. Like so, something Metroidvania along this would be like. Was it Gato Roboto?
Oh yes.
Talking about hard games that frustrate the out of me.
Gato Roboto.
Yeah. That's another one.
That's another one.
That's more a Metroidvania.
That is a very good game, though.
Yeah.
So
it should have been in the list.
Spelunky.
Well, we can talk about it a little bit later.
Yeah,
we'll touch on it in the end.
Spelunky's fun. Like it's. I'm trying to think. I don't even know how to explain Spelunky to someone. It is old. Like it was
2008.
Was it? Yeah, it was.
That is like
it was like beginning era. Like I said, a beginning era to a lot of this stuff, and
So what's the point of the game? Are you collecting stuff?
Well, I mean, pretty much the whole thing is you're just trying to get to the bottom of the dungeon.
Oh, okay.
Like a lot of roguelike games are just like you're trying to get from A to B. So there's things like there's shops in there where you can go and you can buy weapons or you can buy like jetpacks or teleporters or stuff like that. I think a lot of speedrunners just
don't bother.
They don't bother with any of that stuff
because they're like speedrunning. Obviously,
it's a really hard game. Though.
It definitely sounds like Pitfall.
It
does, but
a lot of roguelike games, the way they do it is they make it so you're getting more power. Every playthrough, you're more powerful, right? You get upgrades, you get new weapons, new health, new stuff like that. This one was kind of an earlier one. It didn't really have a lot of that. I don't believe it was a lot more just like some of it felt luck based. Where if you're getting the right tile sets, you're getting the right layouts, stuff like that to really help you get through the game. Where you can have playthroughs that are just like, oh my god, this is the hardest game ever. And other ones you go through and you're like, wow, that wasn't too bad. Like, it's fun, but it was kind of the earlier days of those roguelites.
Do you have to dig at all, or is it just all predetermined, sort of?
No, I think it's just like ladders. You can put like bombs and stuff and blow holes, I think.
Okay,
it's been a while since I played this one, though.
So it's not like Terraria, then?
No, it's not like Terraria. Terraria is more like Minecraft.
So these are procedurally generated
dungeons?
dungeons?
It is like procedurally generated dungeons. And
okay.
It's fun. It's definitely worth checking out, but it is, like I said, some of the difficulty really feels like it's drawing on luck, on what items you're getting, what tile sets you're getting, stuff like that. Like, sometimes the playthrough's really easy, and sometimes the playthrough's really hard. Like, what items are in the shop, what's this, what's that. It is fun, but it is you gotta expect some difficulty for that one.
Yeah.
So that's Spelunky. I know they made a sequel to that one, but I don't remember.
I'm getting shades of like Load Runner or something like that.
Oh yes.
Kinda,
A
yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's a little more close to that, but it's
Yeah.
not exactly.
It's
either.
weird. Like I said, I don't really have like exact parallels to really draw from to be like, oh, because some games you can explain it like, oh, it's like this or it's like that.
Some
it's like
are
this
just-
game. Like you could see where they drew it from, but I think a lot of the earlier ones they didn't really have that quite yet, so they're just like,
Yeah.
kind of did their own thing.
All right.
All right,
Let's
so
get to
moving
the
on.
next
So
game.
this is a new one that was actually just announced.
Oh
I think it
yes.
was like a week before we were making this. They announced that.
Yeah,
Pretty
this
much,
one
yeah.
was like, whoa.
Yeah,
They
so
actually
Yeah.
made this
so
one.
obviously none of us have played this.
Obviously.
This is made by Emu, which I believe did Streets of Rage 4.
They had a hand in making Streets of Rage 4, so they're not the sole developer, but they're one of them. Because at least something like Streets of Rage 4, there's like at least a good mix of developers on that one, but this one totally .emu for sure.
So I think two games we should talk about after this one is Streets of Rage 4 because we didn't include it in our list for some reason.
And we got Gado Roboto.
Gato Roboto, and then there's a third one. I don't know if you guys have played or not, called Dungeon of the Endless. Have you played that?
I've not even heard of that.
I'm not
actually.
sure
Oh, yeah,
if
I've
that's
heard of
one.
that one. Okay.
I've heard that.
Interesting. All right, so let's
yeah,
talk
so,
about
Shredder's Revenge. You want to talk about that one a little bit? I don't know. I don't know how much there really is to say about this one, just because it hasn't really.
It's
come out
almost
yet,
as
so-
if, like...
It looks like it should be good. I hope it's not hot garbage.
But this is coming from, like, .emus, and they've already had their hand in Streets of Rage 4, so it gives me a little bit of faith that they know what they're
You
doing.
manage expectations a little bit.
I
But a little
don't
bit.
know if there's any gameplay footage for this yet. I'll see if I can.
there's a little bit.
No,
Just some basic. Pretty much it looks like they're taking. Funny enough, actually, Turtles in Time was remastered at one point. This for the 360.
I
they
love
had,
that game.
They
Oh,
had Turtles in Time reshelled
Oh,
for PS3 and 360. That were
Something
Xbox
like that. I do
Live
remember that.
arcade games.
I'll have to.
I think they got delisted a long time ago.
This
But,
just looking at the screenshot here, it's a 4-player TMNT game. Reminds me a lot of the Konami arcade game.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I think they were drawing elements where you used to like basically they were taking the core of Turtles in Time, like the gameplay style, like throwing enemies at the screen, having your special abilities, stuff like that. The characters, they kind of like gave it the new animation style. Like it's almost more like the newer Nickelodeon ones that
Yeah.
A
new
little bit.
cartoons they've kind of done, not like kind of the art style of that. So I mean, it looks fun. It looks like one of those games that I'll check it out. It looks like it should be good.
it's like I'm getting like, the Sonic Mania vibe where it's like they put some old stages in there and then they put some new ones in and they got this mechanics going on. It's like a good mishmash from what I'm seeing here, but we'll just
Yeah.
have to see once we actually, play the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I always hate to make expectations about a game before it comes out, right? Because you kind of just you don't want you don't have my number 9 there where you're just like, oh, it's gonna be so good. And it's just like,
I mean, we can try to judge from just what we have right now, but until the game is here, we
Yeah.
don't know. And,
yeah, you don't really know until it comes out. I mean, it does look like it will be fun, and I think I think a lot of people are a lot smarter now with how they're actually approaching a lot of these games, where they're, like I said, they know what to draw from the original games and actually carry forward. And I think when they play it, they're like, well, it needs to play like these original games. It needs to be like that.
So according to Steam's page, it just says coming soon for the release date. And it
Yeah,
says
well, I
it-
don't think they've just had this basic trailer out now. So I mean, you can check out the trailer and kind of, I think everyone kind of get the feeling for what if they want to play it or not. I think it looks like it'll be fun. There's another game there.
we got a bit of faith that they'll treat the IP with
Case,
justice.
so
Yeah, I mean, because they did. Well, let's segue off this into Streets of Rage 4 then.
Yeah, let's go to Streets of Rage 4.
Tribute Games is the developer for the Shredder's Revenge, and they also publish Mercenary Kings, which I actually own, which is, in a nutshell, it's kind of like Metal Slug a little bit.
You can kind of see in the characters there that, that's like
It's-
a real
it's-
homage
It's
to
kind of
Slug.
like Metal Slug with a bit of road-like in it.
That's an interesting, like an interesting premise for,
Mercenary Kings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really played that one. It kind of it looked like Metal Slug to me. Like whenever I
It
see
you
was
see the
Metal
characters
Slug.
and you think Metal
like
Slug.
it's got that same art style to it as Metal Slug.
So no, yeah, let's talk about Streets of Rage 4.
Yeah,
'cause,
which is-
we didn't have it on our list, but we should have, because to me it's a very important game. Well, Streets of Rage is very important to me.
It's at one point. Remember that this was like Sega's, one of their major IPs, and it's been absent for quite a while. And we were kind of hoping that if they ever make another one, like, will they treat it with justice, or will they screw it up? And I think the consensus among people who have played it is like they basically nailed it.
They totally nailed it because
They totally did.
Like I mentioned earlier, Final Fight is one of my all-time favorite games. So I like beat 'em ups and I like shmups. So all the Final Fight games, fantastic. Streets of Rage is Sega's, best beat 'em up they've ever made. So when they came out with Streets of Rage 4, I absolutely had to have it. It's just so satisfying to play that game.
It's like when it was announced, personally, I think I did have my doubts that I wonder how it's gonna play. The trailer was promising, to be honest, and I think there was like also a bit of a lot of people saying like, hey, with this style, you should dirty it up, make it look like, the street or anything like that. So there was like that little bit of concern that will they actually, nail this new Streets of Rage? And there's a bunch of developers who's actually, been involved with this, like .emu from before, Lizard Cube, Guard Crush Games. It's strange that now Sega essentially just allows third parties to just make their games for them.
Yeah, I think Sega's just in licensing mode right now, where they just license out their stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, Sega kind of did that for a while though, because they just.
I mean, Sonic Mania.
Sonic Mania was made, but it wasn't made by Team Sonic or anything.
They
it was
didn't.
a different company that made it.
It's basically there was like T. Lopez, which is like it's known for quite. I think there's like a Sonic 2 HD remake from quite a while back that he was trying to spearhead, and he's got a bunch of remixes on YouTube or anything. And I was actually surprised that he's been, asked to be the composer for Sonic Mania. And I believe the graphics was like done by, I'm not sure who's the name, but it was the same guy who was responsible for the Sonic CD port,
Right.
which was like, yeah, he knows his way around, like making a Sonic game work on a modern platform and have the same feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember Sonic Mania was, I mean, there's so many games I'm sure on.
Was Sonic
have
Mania
on our list, and we can't.
Was it good though?
It was good. Yeah,
It was pretty good.
It was really like if you like Sonic games, it plays like a Sonic game would. Like it's like they just made a sequel to Sonic.
Yeah, with Sonic Mania,
Is
it's
it 2D or 3D?
it is 2D.
It's 2D.
Okay.
It's
like
a pure
it looks
2D game.
it looks just like Sonic for Genesis.
Is it you that has the big box?
I have the Nintendo Switch version with the reversible cover that makes it look like a Genesis game.
Somebody
and I got
has the Sonic Mania.
I've
There's a
seen it
big box
where it's-
for Sonic
yeah, it's
Mania.
got the statue and like the little Genesis.
That might be my friend in BC. He might have that.
Yeah, but good game. Like I don't know what Sega did, but I think what Sega did was like, hey, we want a 2D game. It's like we keep trying the 3D games. Let's go back to 2D.
Why do I
But-
not have that game?
But we're not gonna let Team Sonic do this one. Like, let's try our hand in like, hey, there's some really good fans who's actually been able to replicate the Sonic feel. So let's just contact them. It's like make a Sonic game.
It's kind of funny. Like you see how like through the ages how they always had like new game coming out and they're like, well, it's got to fit like Sonic. It's got to be 3D because 3D is the big thing right now. And now it's kind of come like full circle again where they're like, well, that sucks. Like. This was fun, 2D. Why are we changing it? Like a lot of things have kind of gone back to being like it doesn't need to be
be 3D.
newest technology. It doesn't need to be on the newest engines. It doesn't need to be. It's just like just make
Metroid
a
Prime.
fun game.
Yeah,
like-
that's the core, and especially after the disaster that was Sonic the Hedgehog episode 4.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a can of worms I don't want to open.
Yeah.
Which is a Sonic game that came out in 2013.
I believe it was Sonic Generations at the time.
Or was it Sonic
Well, there
Unlimited?
was Sonic the Hedgehog. There was Sonic
It
Generations.
came out on the Wii.
On the Wii,
There's
the
Sonic Colors.
the
There's
Sonic
and the Black
Colors.
Knight.
Because I went to PAX.
Sonic and the Secret
I went to PAX in
Rings.
2013 and I played it on the Wii, and it actually looked pretty good. It was actually fun. Big 3D game.
And there was like also a Sonic Lost World, which is like it was really drawing.
That's it.
Well,
That's it.
That's on the Wii U.
That's a Wii U
Oh,
though.
that's Wii U?
But
Well, no, sorry. There's Sonic Rise of Lyric.
See, I can tell
But that
you.
was like,
I could
That was
tell you.
two.
I could tell you what it is, but it's on a lanyard hanging on the wall over there.
Yeah.
Can you see that far?
I can't see that far. I just gotta
Okay.
go back.
I can see that far back.
But I remember it got delayed, and I think it was a flop. But when I played it at PAX, it was really fun.
that's the yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like I said, like the issue is, I think a lot of these, a lot of it at the time, like before the 2007, 2008, 2009, it was they were trying to make games to be. It needs to be on the newest technology. If things are 3D, we can't make a 2D game. It needs to be a 3D game.
Not everything has to be.
And you
3D.
take it's almost this mentality shift now of being. It doesn't need to be on the newest technology with the newest engine and the newest
doesn't really have
graphics.
to.
It's just like have a solid game to begin with. Play it and be like, is this fun? And I think that's why like a lot of the old games that were successful, like when you go back and you look at your Marios and stuff like that, it's kind of like people played it and then they'd be like, is this fun? Like, is this something that I enjoy playing? Like, I don't think
Exactly.
anybody played like the new Sonic games were like, oh, this is amazing. I love this game. It's kind of like, it's probably like, oh, this is miserable. But they're like, whatever. We've already spent so much development time on it. Here it is.
Mario's a good example because when Mario 64 came out,
It changed
it
everything.
changed everything, and it was
yeah.
a good game.
But that's
It's
the
still
thing,
a
that-
good game.
It doesn't matter what engine you're on, what graphics you look like, anything like that. And I think a lot of these kind of prove that point. It doesn't need to look new. It needs to be at its core. Is it fun? And I think that's really the question a lot of developers have started to ask themselves. Is
Yep.
it fun?
It doesn't need to be bleeding edge. It needs to be fun.
Yeah, and I think
think-
really that's the core of the game is if it's fun, people won't care what it looks like. They won't care that it's a 2D sprite platformer. They'll be like, oh, well, it's a hell of a lot of fun. And
That's the thing.
and that's really what it boils down to. Is just like games are. You're gonna have certain audiences that are gonna like want it looking cutting edge, but I think a vast majority now have been. They just want to play fun games. They don't care what it looks like. I mean, you look at the Switch, right? Like it's not like outputting 4K or anything like that, but
But it sold like hotcakes.
yeah, people are just buying it up. Like
Oh, wait for Switch Pro.
But it's like even the
Switch
base
Pro rumors
It's like
starting
even
here.
the base Switch, it basically achieved what the Wii U did not.
Nintendo's always been weird about that. They're always like every second console kind of thing because they flub on one and then they come out with something. I mean, you compare the Wii U to the Switch, it's like, well, what's really the difference?
It's like, but I
Well,
appreciate
I mean,
like what,
I could take my controllers off. Okay, like, there's not really that much difference.
It's
between
the same.
two.
It's the same computing power because I mean you got Breath of the Wild on the Wii U and Breath of the Wild on the Switch, and they look the same.
Yeah, it's just one of those weird things where it's kind of like, I mean, that would, like I said, Nintendo's always weird about that. They always like, almost like Prototype 1, it doesn't do well, and then they were like, I mean, the Wii U was the worst selling console they've ever had, I think.
Which is sad because it was actually a good console.
Yeah,
it,
and the
it,
thing is,
it
then
was
you
in
had-
some way.
and then you look at like it was considered a flop, like it was
Yep.
terrible.
It was
then-
marketed poorly.
You play the Switch, which takes a lot of like if you took a Switch Lite and you took a Wii U, you're like, what's the difference?
The
And
difference-
there's really not much of a difference. I don't believe.
Difference
between the two.
is that when they marketed the Wii U, they focused on the tablet, and everybody thought the console was the tablet.
It was like they thought it was like an add-on for the Wii, and that was a problem.
Right. So when they came out with the Switch,
The Wii was originally two GameCubes taped together.
duct taped together.
Yeah.
But when the Wii U came out, people are like, okay, so it's not a tablet, it's just another console.
I think they just really didn't. Well, they just didn't know really what to do with it.
But then they made the Switch. The Switch has exactly the same computing power, well, pretty close to a Wii U, but it's what people anticipated for the Wii U. Oh, it's a tablet.
You can actually take it anywhere. You can play freaking anywhere,
Yeah.
which the Switch truly achieves it this time around.
Yeah, well, I suppose arguably the thing with the Wii U versus the Switch is that with the Wii U, you're tethered to your console, right? You can't just take it
Yeah.
out remotely. So there's other differences to them, but
And I'm sure that the Switch has a bit more processing power than the Wii U, but I mean, Breath of the
little bit.
Wild looks exactly the same on both. from
Well,
what I can tell.
as far as I know, because I have both versions of like Breath of the Wild, and I can tell you that the Wii U is running on like what is it? It says 720p,
Yeah, the Wii U is 720p.
and the Switch is not exactly 1080.
Does it do the dynamic resolution?
It does a
thing, or-
dynamic. It drops down to something like 900p sometimes, but the frame rate is a little better on the Switch, which is funny when you consider Breath of the Wild was originally a Wii U title, and they just ported it over to the Switch.
Yeah.
That's kind of a funny thing to me. It's definitely like it's like the Twilight Princess scenario
Yeah.
with a Zelda. It's like you got the GameCube version and the Wii version.
Yeah.
So that was a funny thing. But let's get back on topic to Streets of Rage 4, and this is
We always kind of start talking about some
We
game.
were
and it
talking
just,
about
like,
Streets of Rage 4?
It
What?
just triggers all these synapses start firing off all these memories of other things, and you just go off on this tangent.
It's a podcast.
but it's a fun
we're talking.
topic to just go on a tangent. But let's
yeah.
get back to Streets of Rage 4.
Try to keep it a little on topic.
It's like
Streets of Rage 4. So I don't know. Like I really liked it. I mean, like I said, I think you guys are both
think we
bigger
liked
Genesis
it.
than I am.
We
I know
liked
you-
it quite
I know
a
you-
bit.
more
I know
than
you
you.
other Chris are definitely a bigger Genesis guy, I think, than I am. I like the Genesis.
I'm a huge Genesis guy, but I was
Or
always a
secondary for me.
Nintendo kid, and it's not until I got older that I got into Genesis. And now I have a Genesis, SMS, Sega CD, 32X.
the whole Sega lot.
Yeah,
Power
But Streets
base
of Rage 4, I
converter.
mean, it's fantastic for making a sequel to a game. Obviously, original Genesis game that hasn't. Well, I don't want to say it didn't have because it had other IP. It had what was that game for 64? And it was like supposed to be what Streets of Rage was. Then it became this other game.
For Nintendo 64?
Yeah,
I think there was like not just 64. It was like a bunch of things and
Fighting Force.
yeah, Fighting Force, something
Yeah.
like that. It was
so Fighting
supposed.
Force was originally supposed to be a Streets of Rage game, and then they kind of
I believe if you go to like
have to look
like,
that up.
if you go on YouTube and search up Guru Larry's video, I think he's
Yeah,
touched
he-
up on
he
that
kinda talked about
somewhere where it's like it was supposed to be Streets of Rage,
Yeah.
and Sega was like, no,
No,
if it
forget
becomes
that.
multi-platform, we're not gonna do it.
Yeah.
So we won't allow you. So you're gonna have to rebrand the whole thing and
Yeah.
release it as something else.
Yeah.
But it's funny to me that Streets of Rage 4, like especially now when it actually exists, that they can manage to be on hiatus for such a long time.
Oh yeah, I mean,
And
you think about when
they
Streets of
kinda
Rage
nailed
3
it.
Came out, and then they kind of made a sequel now, like how many years later, and it's still like it's a fantastic game. Like it's knowing what to expect. Like if you played Streets of Rage 3, you
And-
played any of the old Streets of Rage games, and you jump into this one, it's like, yeah, no,
Like it feels
that's Streets of Rage. Like it feels the same. I think even the music was still
yeah.
like,
It was there was
had that tinny, which is hard sound to emulate too. Like when you start doing, when you're talking about trying to make a game like that, where you're trying to do the sound design and everything similar, some sounds are just so unique to the systems that it's hard to replicate. How do you make that sound? How do
Yeah.
you make
Yeah.
new software make it sound like this?
Now, you have to remember that when the Genesis came out in 88 or 89,
89, 88, 89.
Something like that.
Yeah.
you have to realize that people were running the Genesis through an RF connection on a 14-inch TV with a even tinier speaker. So why put all that effort into making the sound that's just going to come out of that crappy speaker?
Yeah.
Because I have one of the HDMI Genesises, and running Streets of Rage 3 through it sounds
What's the plural of
fantastic.
Genesis? Is
Genesis?
it Genesis?
Genesis. It's kind of a funny
Is
term.
it like octopus? You Genesai?
Genocide. So,
One
okay, that's
Genesis
just
or
kind of
multiple
funny.
Genesis? Or maybe it's just like moose. That's like I have two Genesis.
Anyway, running any of the Streets of Rage games through this HDMI Genesis, it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's like the kind of sound that, just because at the time you probably didn't have the hardware to actually hear it correctly, that now you look at it years later.
Well, the other thing
Well,
is,
you almost kind of wonder if it's like actually like that was the original developers, what they were developing on, how they sounded. Like especially you figure with stuff like music, where it's like the composer's generating this music, and I want it to sound like this, and it's got this feel to it, and then they go and then they like I almost wonder if a lot of them they went and they played their game afterwards, and they're like, it's not supposed to sound like that.
yeah, the other thing
the
is
hell?
they had limited space on the cartridge, so they had to use very low bitrate samples.
it had to be like coded efficiently because that card space can only go so far.
I mean, FM music is basically a text file that plays through a Yamaha chip. So I mean that's not a space constraint, but yeah, any digital sounds had to be as small as possible. So that's why they sounded so. They're probably like like 8-bit 11 kilohertz or even less than that possibly. You know?
Yeah, there's like a lot of digital samples on the Genesis. Like you can see a lot of games like using digital samples, and you gotta wonder how big of a file size they exist in the cart.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of people don't realize that Genesis actually came out in '88.
Yeah, it's weird because a lot of people
weird thing.
like they almost like attribute it to like Super Nintendo, but it's like Super Nintendo came out
91.
90, 91, yeah.
Yeah, I think 91, 92 is
Here,
when
let me double
Super
check
Nintendo
that.
came
I'm
out.
pretty sure it was like 91 because the Genesis was like after the NES was like released what in 85, and then you wait a few years.
No, I think NES came out like I think 83, 82 or 83.
Or depending on the if we're putting in the Famicom into the
Well,
equation.
yeah, if you're saying Famicom, I think that was like 80, 82, and I think the NES came out like 83.
Okay, so we got the Super Nintendo release date on screen, and looks like Japan got it first in 1990,
Yeah,
and
so
North
it's
America
like
got
91,
91.
91 for North America. But
So you got that like how many years gap between when the Genesis was released, and then you got the Super Nintendo Super Famicom released in 91. There's like a little bit
I'm
of
actually
time.
surprised, people don't have more nostalgia about Genesis, just because it had that like 3 year ahead of Nintendo, right?
Yep.
Like,
That's a
but
long
I
time.
really think it was bigger in Europe. Like a lot of people in Europe always talk about the
Mega Drive.
Mega Drive and stuff like that, and it was just really huge there. And it
Mega Drive was huge in Hong Kong. Everybody in Hong Kong had a Mega Drive.
yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
it
know.
was huge.
Just like didn't pick up as much here. I suppose they had the market share with Nintendo, right? Because I remember Nintendo and then the Super Nintendo, right?
Well, when it came out in '88, Nintendo, the Nintendo Entertainment System was in its heyday, right? So people are like, "What's this Genesis thing?" Right?
yeah,
It was
you're
like
already,
its
you're already
prime, for
established
sure.
on that brand of the Nintendo.
And
Entertainment System.
maybe by '88, maybe Nintendo was hinting that there was going to be a Super Nintendo at that point. Maybe so. Maybe the hype was going for
Yeah, they
that.
probably. Well, you figure like probably late '80s, they probably started hyping up Super Nintendo, right? Because they figure like, oh, it's a few years out. We got to start talking about this, and like,
Yeah.
oh, the new console's coming out and everything like that. So
See, Sega had it really easy because they had like so much arcade hardware back then that all they had to do was pick a board, downsize it, make it cost effective, stick it in a console, and
Put
basically,
cards on it.
Yeah, exactly. The SMS was that. The Genesis was that. The Saturn was based off of an arcade board.
Up to the Dreamcast.
The Dreamcast was Naomi, and basically Naomi changed everything. Everybody just started using Naomi because they're like, why should we spend millions developing a board? We'll just buy Naomi's from Sega. And... Anyway, we're getting off topic.
Anyway, let's go back to Streets of
going
Rage.
back to what we were talking about. So. Streets of Rage. I mean, honestly, like I said, you know what to expect. I think at this point, if you like Streets of Rage, check out Streets of Rage 4. It's a good game. It's beat 'em up. There's a lot of.
It would be cool if they could make a Streets of Rage 4 that would actually run on a Genesis. I think that would be kind of cool.
You mean Paprium?
What?
Oh, Paprium.
Oh my god! You did not just mention
Why
that
did
thing.
we not talk
just
about
went there.
that game? Oh my
Okay,
god.
let's talk about it
How many
now.
years was that?
I don't
Eight
know.
8 years in development?
Oh, I don't even know.
Oh my
Alright,
god!
I mean,
Let's put this thing
Watermelon
in
games
now.
Watermelon games is like a whole nother conversation to itself of that.
That is a messed up game. Like
It is. I do find it amusing. I mean, we kind of touched up before. We were talking about Ultra Core, where it's kind of like a game that came out for old consoles that released now. I mean, you
Yeah,
can talk
modern
about
game.
homebrew and stuff like that on this whole other thing. I mean, these aren't really. I suppose they would be considered homebrew.
Well, it's a new game.
It's a new game developed for old hardware. I'd say it's homebrew. Like that to me at least is what
because
kind of
you
falls
don't
under.
have exactly like the license a la back in the day where you have to actually go to Nintendo or Sega where it's like you gotta get some licenses like, hey, I want to release this game.
Yeah.
So I guess
like I said, to me, I'm like stuff like Paprium is like a homebrew, but I just kind of laughed about that because Paprium. I mean, we're talking about Streets of Rage 4. It's kind of like, gotta mention Paprium.
it's like you have to mention it because it's like, oh boy, as if it wasn't already weird as it was.
Yeah, I mean, Paprium is a whole other thing where it's like it wasn't gonna come out, it kind of fell apart, and it was like this mystical thing: is Paprium ever gonna come out? And all of a sudden they're like, hey, the game's out, and it's like, what the hell? People were like, yeah, I pre-ordered it 7 years ago, and it showed up yesterday. Like, what the hell's going on?
That's a saga in itself.
Yeah,
It's like, oh my god.
I've watched
There's
games.
tons of videos and stuff on Paprium. I don't think we really need to cover all that.
We don't need,
Yeah,
I don't think so. But
we don't need to get
the
into
point
that.
was like, yeah, you got a game.
It was a joke.
It was a
Yeah,
joke.
it's like Final Fight, Streets of Rage, and Choa Nikki all rolled into one game.
It's like,
Yeah.
wow.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I really think, the whole retro game, the whole art style and everything like that, I really think it started around the 2007s, like I was saying before, with I Want to Be the Guy being just like a Flash-based browser game somebody decided to develop. And then I think it really started picking up probably like I said, probably like 2009-ish, where you started talking about like, your Mega Man, Mega Man 9, Mega Man 10, stuff like that. And you started having people saw that the potential was there to make essentially retro style games, and really just I think they really do well because it's the core of the game, right? The meat of it is really it's fun. It's a fun game, and that's really what it boils down to. It doesn't the looks. I don't think people are like, oh, it looks so cool. Like I know. I mean, you can make the argument of people like, well, I like the retro art style, but I think
It's the pixel art style that gets me.
yeah, but I think like it doesn't make the game or break it. Like
No.
it doesn't draw away from a good game for being pixel art. Even people who don't like pixel art necessarily, they still like, well, I mean, it's still a fun game. And for other people, if it was a bad game that had pixel art, well, I mean, you're probably not going to play it much either. So I think focusing more so on the core of the games, the meat, the gameplay, really allowed people to really dive into it more and really just kind of have fun with it and play the games and just enjoy a fun game. Doesn't matter how it looks. And you start getting remasters now of games, and even seeing old IPs coming back like Streets of Rage and things like even Battletoads, which I know was a mixed bag for a lot of people.
Battletoads for the NES? Don't even get me
I
started.
mean, you can argue if that's even considered an IP because they had
Yeah.
like 4 games, maybe, kind of,
Something.
depending on how you
I
make
can't
the
tell you
argument.
how many times that cartridge flew across the room between me and my brother when we were kids.
Freaking Battletoads.
Especially with that stupid, what was it? The rocket sled maze thing.
Oh, wow. The Turbo Tunnels.
Yeah, like I don't even know how that cartridge still works because it bounced off so many walls when we were kids.
Yeah.
Well, unless you decide to scratch like the connectors on the cartridge, then I guess.
Yeah.
That is
But yeah,
that
I
is an
mean-
abused cartridge.
I really think there's a lot of games out there now, and I really think I don't really see that being a style of games that's going to go away. Like I think it's kind of like
No, I hope it gets bigger.
I think it's really good for independent developers too, where they can make a game where they don't need to necessarily worry about the art style. They know it can succeed if it's just a fun game. It doesn't need to look 3D graphics and like look amazing. As long as the core of the game is fun, I think people will latch onto it and hopefully jump into it. And I know we covered a whole lot on here, and I'm sure there's, especially nowadays, I'm sure there's a lot more that we haven't even thought about that we probably never played.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's like a whole a whole rabbit hole of just games that like probably flew past under the radar.
If you're talking about this in like 2008, 2009, it'd be like, oh, this kind of seems to be a
cool.
new style is coming back around, being talking about retro style games. But now it's almost so ingrained. I don't even want to say like it's ingrained in like gaming culture now to have those retro games.
It's kind of cool now that you can still release a retro style game now, and it will get a lot more recognition than probably from years ago.
Yeah, like I think a lot of games now, it's kind of like if they release this in like, if you said like 2004, right, something like The Messenger, if that came out in 2004, like how well would that really do? Would people be like, oh, it looks old, I don't want to play that? Or would it be like, oh, like it was that nostalgia really there at that point? Or is it really just stuff came out at the right time to trigger that nostalgia for people?
Yeah.
Game collecting started picking up, especially for games of that era, and it really, right time, right?
You have to also understand that at this point, around 6, 7, 8, 2007, all the way to 2009, Xbox Live Arcade was big.
Oh yeah,
It was a big deal. It's like it drew
Oh,
people
yeah.
in
Well,
to
it
like
was easy for developers too to just make an independent, an indie game to go and just throw it on Xbox Live Arcade because they had the developer studio and stuff. You could just go and you could upload your own games to it and stuff like that.
I still play
They're pretty
Xbox
lax.
Live indie games to this day. 'Cause
Yeah,
they're
they
so
were-
there's
good.
a lot of
pretty
good
lax.
ones.
Yeah, they were pretty lax for the first little while with it, where they kind of allowed a little bit more free reign for it. I don't think they really cared too much about certifications and stuff like that. Just like, I'm gonna make a game, throw it up there, and have fun.
That's why they had the big warning before the game played.
Yeah,
But it made
I know
sense.
they cracked down on that a little bit afterwards, where they started being like, well, you still got to go through our certification and blah, blah, blah to make sure it's not just some crap. Because there was a lot of games came out for that.
All that legalese and all that stuff.
Yeah, you start treading fine lines. But I mean, it was interesting for
It was
Nintendo to just kind of allow that because you start seeing a lot of pixel art style games like that. Like I said, because it was easy to develop. The style had already been established. It was already something that started kind of getting picked up on, and now you see major developers basically doing it too. Right?
A tried and true method for sure. Back to the topic of Streets of Rage 4. I just like that you can just get into this game, play it like a Streets of Rage game, and you got that modern flair, all that modern 2D animation that you would expect, and you got familiar characters, you got new ones. It's almost as if like
it's just like taking an old game and giving it a modern polish to it.
yeah, it's basically that, and it really, truthfully, really deserves like being the next sequel to the Streets of Rage, and they really nailed this one. Really fun to play, absolutely replayable. It's got enough of difficulty that I think with Streets of Rage 4, it's quite accessible now that you got easy mode, you got normal mode, you got those really hard modes if you really want to.
Yeah.
Especially now, and you can even play like online or anything like that, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. All right, well, I think on that we'll kind of wrap it up and call it a day. I think we've been talking for a while here now.
Almost 2 hours.
Almost, but I think I think we should
Row.
Yeah.
I think
How do you guys think? You start talking about stuff you're passionate about, and it's kind of like conversation. It's gonna flow, and you're gonna be like, "Oh, crap! I've been talking for 2
I think we should wrap up with something like we've been all mostly talking about pixel art and anything. I think we should just touch up on very briefly on like what about the fifth generation, like we're talking the PS1 style, the N64 style, especially with now with
polygonal,
polygonal shaky. You just know that it's PS1.
I don't know. I don't know if there's that nostalgia for that stuff yet.
It's like, are they actually nailing the style of like the PS1 or something like that? Like, hey,
I mean, what are they really making that's like that right now?
like you got like a bunch of horror games, like they're emulating the PS1 style, where it's like there's no Z buffer or anything. It's like it's absolutely the shaky ones. Like there's like a bunch of like.
Well, I guess in terms of like gameplay, the survival horror style.
Yeah, a la Resident Evil or something like that. Or
well, I mean, there is like the medium and stuff like that, which is definitely took having the cinematic camera where they kind of lock you in place and they kind of like they give you this is the view we want you to have, and you kind of like the tank controls with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Those I almost think those fit more. Like it fits to that specific subgenre of the survival horror games, because a lot of that is about like it's almost like an anti-game, because most games, right, it's like feeling powerful, right? Like that's a big part of the game. You're feeling this big powerful character and like it could do anything. But then survival horror is supposed to be the opposite of that. You want to feel like you look at
you're powerless.
You look at your Silent Hill games and stuff like that, and you're not meant to fight. Like if you run into an enemy, it's like, I mean, yeah, you can probably kill this thing, but
you can try, but
you're probably a lot better off just running away. Like it gives you that option where you can decide whether or not to do that. But it definitely makes you feel powerless, and I think that's part of survival horror. But like things like that and things like the fixed camera and stuff like that definitely fit well with that genre where they want to give you a certain atmosphere to it, where it works better having that fixed camera in a spot to be like, well, this is the view you're gonna see and this is what you're gonna experience.
They're making it more cinematic, right? So
yeah, I mean, we're not talking like Hideo Kojima cinematic where you're watching a movie for 3 hours and playing 5 minutes of gameplay.
Oh, that's a whole other podcast.
yeah,
on itself.
that's another thing. Like we gotta write that down for sure. But
Kojima.
But there's just something about like the style of the PS1 that's like something about it just fits the horror genre for some reason. It's like
Yeah, well, I think it was because with the twin sticks, right? Like it
and
just
even before the introduction of the DualShock, like
yeah. Because I guess Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 1 didn't have that. It just
you
had
got
the-
even games like Silent Hill.
yeah.
So I'm just surprised that there's like there's some sort of big nostalgia for that kind of style, and like it used to be like, oh, it's all shaky like compared to something like the N64 or the Sega Saturn
Yeah.
or something like that.
Like I said, it feels more like things are kind of cyclical, where it comes back to what worked and then kind of what didn't. I mean, I know survival horror really took a drop off in like I want to say like PS3 era. There was some that were still like that, like Alan Wake, which is a 360
Which
exclusive.
that's a fantastic game. Fantastic game in its own right.
Yeah. Oh, I love Alan Wake. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, like, you look at like PS1 era, you had things like Resident Evil, you had Silent Hill, you had Fatal Frame, you had Siren,
Parasite Eve.
Parasite
yeah, Parasite
Eve.
Eve. Parasite Eve was kind of a weird one though. That was
It's
like
a
an
weird one for sure.
RPG-ish. But I mean, there was a lot more, like Ill-Bled.
I haven't heard of some of these.
There's a lot like around that time frame. There's a lot more survival horror, and as you went to PS2, you still had a little bit. And I think really around when Resident Evil 4 came out, it's almost that was that flick the switch, where it's more action horror instead. It wasn't survival horror anymore. And now it's kind of come back around, where you had like Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6. 4, I think, hit everything well, but then 5 and 6 were kind of too over the top, and then 7 has come
they went
back.
action based. Like I was gonna say,
Yeah,
like some
like
of them
too
went
much
action.
action.
Absolutely, it's like
And then 7 kind of came back around, and it became more how the old ones were, where you're powerless, right? Like it's a weird line to balance, because you want people don't like feeling they're not powerful in games, right? Like that's part of the escapism for games, is
Exactly.
feeling powerful. I'm the
Yeah.
superhero. I'm defending the world.
It's like you're the best. Like you can actually.
And it's not like
make a change
no,
or something.
no, you suck. Like you see that like little fly guy bouncing around there? He's gonna kill you. You're gonna
less,
die.
You're less than average.
Yeah, that crappiest thing. You don't touch anything. Everything's gonna kill you.
Everybody just wants you dead.
Yeah.
It's something like that.
Would you consider The Last of Us to be survival horror?
I would say so. I think that doesn't really feel like that's more of a survival horror. Like you have the action elements of, like I said, you're powerful enough to take down enemies, and part of the game is to take down enemies. Versus something like Alien Isolation,
Which
where
the point of
you're-
that game
the point
was-
is to avoid things. You're not meant to fight things. It's like, I mean,
You can
have
try.
to. You can try. There's some stuff you do, but I mean, you're really incentivized to not. I really, I think survival horror as a whole, like, I mean, I'm big into horror, so I think that's almost like a whole another conversation. But
absolutely.
I'm into horror, but I never played many horror games, so to speak.
yeah, I think like so. We should start wrapping this up.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that we basically covered quite a number of games that's like sort of has retro game elements, whether or not like.
Yeah, I mean, I could think we could sit here for 4 hours and be talking about every.
Yeah,
single
I don't think
one.
we probably just barely scratched the surface on
Oh yeah, I mean,
the elements.
a lot of these were the games that kind of stood out to me, and like a good variety of them, and just different genres, and just kind of, I guess, showing the progression too of where the games were and how just new IPs and stuff like that were getting developed, and now where they're actually taking old IPs and then making sequels to them, making remakes of them and stuff like that, and still keeping that core elements of the game.
And people are liking them because Streets of Rage 4 has an 82 grade on Metacritic. So
they're doing something right.
Doing something right.
And the game only came out in 2020, so it hasn't been out that long. April, almost this time last year, I would say.
And I would say, like, years down the line, it's going to be considered as a classic at this point, and
Yeah.
you can really see, years down the line, like, it's going to be treated in the same respect as the first 3 games, so...
Hopefully we'll see some DLC for this game.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just like, it's giving me this itch to actually play this again, so...
So I think that's it for our first monthly podcast for Retzone.ca. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our videos.
Right? We will
Hopefully-
see you
hope you
on.
enjoyed the conversation. And,
Yeah,
I'm
lots
sure
of
a lot
tangents, but pretty much a fun conversation to have for like a
it's
couple
kind of
hours.
just a couple of us sitting around talking about stuff, and I think we've got a lot of topics to discuss in the future, and we'll get around to
Absolutely.
it.
We'll see you on the next podcast.
Right? We'll see you around.
Thank you.
Bye.